I'm Stephen J. Garvey, founder, leader of National Citizens Alliance of Canada, NCA. This is a follow-up presentation on our previous presentation on radical extremism in Canada. And tonight I'm going to answer three basic questions about radical extremism in Canada. I have three little video clips to play which will shed insight. And I should say at the outset, the National Citizens Alliance of Canada is 100% opposed to radical extremism in our country. And we do not tolerate supremacy, racism, hatred against people in our party. This is something we're against. At the same time, we're against these radical extremists who we argue are supremacists, racist, hateful, and political Islam is probably at the pinnacle of that. And we're going to show that tonight. We don't believe these groups should be in Canada. We're questioning, in the case of political Islam, why they are in Canada. And that's something we will not tolerate. They have no place in this country. And finally, before I get into Hizb ut-Tahrir Canada organization, I should qualify that it's not only Trudeau and the globalists that are supporting extremists, allowing them in a country. The Harper regime did it. You know, they had Pakistan, Islamic Republic of Iran in the top 5 of immigrant countries, people coming into Canada. That is a fact. So do your fact checking. Canadians who want to make this all about the globalist liberals, Trudeau, they're not telling the truth. They're spinning a lie. Some of them have political motives to deceive the Canadian people. But at the NCA, we stick to the facts. And we expose all globalists. We don't care what your color is, what your party is, what your name is. If you're a globalist and you're selling out our people, we're going to expose you. And we are true to our anti-globalist agenda, pro-Canadian agenda. And these Harper neocons were probably at the pinnacle of globalism on many fronts. We believe they're actually worse than the liberals if you look at all the facts and all the things they've done, if you add in Mulroney. So don't get fooled into this game of left, right, liberal, conservative, playing you back and forth. These are false dichotomies just to control you, divide you. And I'm going to show in this presentation that the radical extremism in our country is another means to divide Canadians. So let's get right into this. I just want to shed some insight on the organization. This is Hizb ut-Tahrir. They're holding an annual Khalifa, which is Caliphate Conference in Mississauga, Ontario. As I mentioned in the previous video, March 16th at the Mississauga Value Community Center. This is a public facility paid for by taxpayers. This is their agenda here. Talk 1, time to show complete ta'akul to Allah. This is true obedience to Allah, true faithfulness to Allah in His mission, and by extension Muhammad and the Quran. Talk 2 is about whether Muslims should embrace nationalism, Islamic nationalism, and a lot of some Canadians are concerned about the demographics, and this should be an alarm bell going off to Canadians, the whole idea of Islamic nationalism in Canada. Talk 3, populism and the threat of integration. See, this is very concerning too. This is a red flag. This suggests that they're against integrating into what it means to be Canadian. Very disturbing. Very disturbing. And obviously, NCA, Canada's True Populist Party, we have a policy of mandatory integration, and we have tough screening protocol, ideological screening protocol, and zero tolerance for political Islam. If we look at the aim of Hizb ut-Tahrir, this is on their main website. They talk about Sharia rules, implementing them, Islamic State, Caliphate State, and then they go on. They talk about using dawah, which is devotion of Muslims to the cause, and jihad for implementation. And they want to govern here, quote, govern the world according to the laws of Islam, Sharia. The aim is to bring back Islamic guidance for mankind and struggle against the kafir, which is the unbeliever, infidel. And that's what they're seeking to do. So this begs the question, why are they in our country? Why are they being allowed into our country? So I'm just going to shed a bit more insight into this. I have a couple of videos I'm going to play which will make this even clearer. This is Hizb ut-Tahrir rally. It's an international organization. If I go back here to this website, I'll show you here at the bottom. They're in Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Crimea, Indonesia, Kenya, Malaysia, Pakistan, Tanzania, Turkestan, Turkey, Uzbekistan, Syria, Sudan, Morocco, Lebanon, Britain, Germany, Russia, Scandinavia, Netherlands, on and on and on. They're all over the world. So this rally just happened to be in London, but it's the same organization as in Canada. So here's some insight. This shows the anti-West dogma and their opposition to Canadians, Westerners, which we are labeled as infidels, kafir.
We embrace the mercy. We embrace every single thing that is set upon us, and we deal with it. Because we have no fear. So when we see the example of our brothers and sisters fighting in Chechnya, Iraq, Palestine, Kashmir, Afghanistan, then we know where the example lies. When we see Hezbollah defeating the armies of Israel, we know what the solution is and where the victory lies. We know that it is incumbent upon all of us to support the jihad of our brothers and sisters in these countries when they are facing the oppression of the West. Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
Wow, that was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Hey, I created this beautiful logo for...
There it is here. I'm going to play it again to make sure everyone gets it.
We embrace every single thing that is set upon us, and we deal with it. Because we have no fear. So when we see the example of our brothers and sisters fighting in Chechnya, Iraq, Palestine, Kashmir, Afghanistan, then we know where the example lies. When we see Hezbollah defeating the armies of Israel, we know what the solution is and where the victory lies. We know that it is incumbent upon all of us to support the jihad of our brothers and sisters in these countries when they are facing the oppression of the West. Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
I'm going to turn to a second video. I'm just going to play a short clip on it. This is of one of the key organizers in Canada of Hizb ut-Tahrir. This is Mazim Abdul Adim, and he's giving a presentation defending Sharia, Islamic Sharia law. And I'm just going to play an excerpt. It's quite disturbing. He talks about justifying cutting off a kid's hand and doing other things. It's so just keep this in mind. I'm going to play it.
The punishments, cutting the hand of the thief and whipping the fornicator and so on. What do you do in these situations? How does this work? These are last resorts after you've established these systems. You have a just ruling system that establishes unity and accountability. You have an economic system that establishes balance and justice within the economy. You have a social system based on mutual respect. You have an education policy that gives people real goals in life. And you have a foreign policy that represents real justice in this world. Honest, real, true justice. But when somebody comes into the society and wants to start breaking the rules, even though he has food, even though he has money, even though he's comfortable and he has no issues and he's treated with respect, he wants to go and steal, he wants to go and break the rules. Islam says the way that you stop these are people who are not in need, these are people who want to do bad. You show them that if you do it, the punishment is so severe, it'll stop them from doing it. And there's due process. So it's not you just pull out a giant sword and you cut off the hand of a little kid. It has to go to court, there's a minimum standard, there's Sharia requirements for theft. It has to be a certain amount of value. It's quite a high value. And it has to be stolen from something that's either locked away or kind of preserved, like a car or something like this. And the person must not need it. He must not be in need. There's due process, and it has to go to court in front of a judge, and the judge is the one who makes the judgment. There has to be due process. Is this a mercy or is this a protection for society? So the final question is, why does the media present Islam in such a terrible way? And the answer is, of course we can say, oh, they hate Islam and so on. And yes, there are people who hate Islam. But the thing that I want you to look at is that their aqeedah is secularism. Their viewpoint on why they exist is God exists, but He doesn't tell us what to do. Our aqeedah says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists, and He does tell us everything. So this is a threat to their way of life. And they're worried about their interests and their wealth and all the stuff. The 500 people who own half the world's wealth. They're afraid that somebody's going to come and say, no, 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 hold on. The rest of the world actually should share in the wealth of the world. So the aqeedah of Islam and the system of Islam is a replacement, it's an alternative to the secular way of life. So in conclusion, what is Sharia law? It's not the personal opinion of the scholars. It is not Saudi tribal rule. It's not whipping people and stoning them at the very first moment of implementing Islam. It's not living in caves and forbidding science and technology like the atheists propose. And it is not cutting the hand of a little boy named Ala-ad-Din. Sharia is the solutions from the designer of the world. And it brings tranquility for all in the solutions themselves and the recognition that this is from the Creator. It's not from some guy. It's from the one who created us all. And I want to leave this last point as a role for everyone to consider. For the Muslims, it's your responsibility, it's our responsibility, all of us, to study this deen, to study the Sharia, and to carry it to the world. You have to carry this. And for the non-Muslims who are listening, I invite you to come and study Islam as an alternative to the capitalist way of life. We have books, the ruling system in Islam, the social system in Islam, the economic system in Islam, and a large library of very clear, precise explanations of how Islam works as a comprehensive system for mankind. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم. O you who believe, answer the call of Allah and His Messenger when He calls you to that which gives you life. And what gives you life? It's the lifestyle that He gave you. That's what gives you life and tranquility. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. تكبير. الله أكبر. تكبير. الله أكبر. تكبير. الله.
Now I have a third video I'm going to play, and this last video is Hizb ut-Tahrir defending execution of anyone who leaves Islam, apostasy, and this is a form of Sharia. But you know, in that previous video, if you listen to that radical Islamic who actually lives in Ontario and is a big organizer for Hizb ut-Tahrir Canada, he was arguing that Sharia, he defends it on grounds that it's come from Allah through Muhammad, and therefore everyone must follow it. That's the basic reasoning. Unbelievable, but that's what it is, and he's defending anything within that, cutting off arms, stoning people, executing people, cutting off heads, whatever. It is what it is. So the second video goes into it a bit further. So this is strictly just to let you know what the government is letting into our country.
The Constitution of the Khilafah state says at 7C that if there was somebody born a Muslim who decided they didn't believe in Allah anymore, and they would then be declared an apostate, and you would seek to kill them. Is that, that's your draft constitution of the Khilafah state. Do you stand by that? Do you want to kill ex-Muslims?
Where did you get that constitution from?
Your website.
Our website. It's not on the website.
It was a year and a half ago. I got it from your website.
Right.
About 2 years ago. It was there then, and we've since deleted it. But Hizb ut-Tahrir is a global political organisation, and so their constitution is on many websites. It's also on the UK website, the one you had linked to a PDF file, which I downloaded a while ago.
The draft constitution is a draft constitution for the Khilafah, and we've been very clear that we work to establish the Khilafah in the Muslim world. And the constitution is based on Islamic sources, and the whole thing covers different aspects of the Islamic law, the Sharia law. The ruling of apostasy in Islam is clear. Again, that's one of the things the West doesn't like, and so seeks to change. The ruling of apostasy as such in Islam is clear, that apostates do attract capital punishment, and we don't shy away from that, we don't shy away from saying that.
So that is information for you to make better decisions. We view Hizb ut-Tahrir a radical extremist organization. We do not believe they should be in Canada. They do not share our values, our civil rights, our liberties. So there's 3 questions I'm going to answer now. The first one is, why are these Hizb ut-Tahrir people in Canada and living off our healthcare, social services, and using our public facilities such as the Mississauga Valley Community Center? And I should say at the outset, we do not blame and we cannot blame the organizers and supporters of Hizb ut-Tahrir. They have been allowed into Canada and even welcomed into Canada and given citizenship by the federal government and previous federal governments, and in association with the provincial and municipal governments. The blame does not reside with Hizb ut-Tahrir or any other radical extremist group in Canada. That's point number 1. It would be extremely misguided of anyone to take out any disagreement with these people directly, and that's something we would condemn. That is wrong. They've been invited, they've been welcomed, and that is a fact. They've been given citizenship. So in that sense, you can't blame them. So the second question is, why is the federal government and the multi-controlled opposition in Ottawa, and I use multi-controlled opposition, allowing them into Canada? And we can add in the Privy Council there as well. Maybe we should ask the clerk of the Privy Council for the answer to this question. And why have previous governments done the same? And I'll tell you, from our perspective, this is all about globalism, divide and conquer. It's helping to spread ethnic enclaves in Canada and potentially leading to immigrant ghettos, which is causing division amongst Canadians. So the caption, divide and control. There's erosion of free speech now, which is connected to these groups. We can look at M103 and other, and all the political correctness and all the claims of racism and hate and bigotry for even talking about this subject. That's a form of suppression of free speech. There's also the erosion of traditional identity, heritage, and cultural norms. These groups coming in are just dividing and helping to erode our traditional values, way of life. As everyone knows, it's a way to obtain new votes. All these new immigrants coming in are new votes, and a lot of them tend to vote for the party that brings them in. And then if we look at demographics, traditional Canadians are being replaced through sustained mass immigration. And they're being replaced by visible ethnic minorities. And these groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir are part of that. Coupled with high fertility rates of some of these visible ethnic groups. This is a fact. I know some Canadians are in denial, disbelief that this is occurring. We encourage you to look up the demographic data. It's very clear that Canada is on a trajectory of literally replacing its traditional populations of Euro-Canadians and First Nations. There's a projection for 2100, 2106 of 20% or less for Euro-Canadians traditional population. And on the flip side, 80% visible ethnic minorities. So this is all dividing, eroding, kicking down the Euro-white Canadian. This is what's going on, and this is all part of it. And we believe at NCA the ultimate goal by this globalist establishment and its multi-controlled opposition, and this is going back to Pierre Trudeau, starting back in the 70s, all the way up to now. There's been a establishment goal to turn Canada into, quote, a post-national state, also known as a UN globalist village, with no distinct identity, heritage, cultural norms, values. And collateral damage is the replacement of traditional population with third world immigrants. Just look in your communities, look in your towns, cities, provinces, territories, country. It's happening all around us. No one can deny it. This is all organized and planned by the globalist establishment. There's been no referendum on this. The Canadian people have never been given a say. So these are globalist, elitist crooks in Ottawa that are implementing this plan. They think they know better than everyone else. But I encourage everyone to do their homework. Email us if you want. We'll send you the demographic data. Send us an email at info@nationalcitizensalliance.ca. Further to that point, we encourage you to look up Professor Ricardo Duchesne out of University of New Brunswick. He's done a lot of work on this, and he's written a book, Canada in Decay. Go get that book, purchase it, read it, and it'll bring you up to speed. Finally, the third question that needs to be addressed is, why is the Canadian electorate allowing for this globalist agenda? Because remember, the Canadian electorate is putting these globalist establishment parties into power. Every 4 years, depending on what's happening, every 4 years, they keep putting them back into power. So why is the Canadian electorate doing this? First off, most Canadians don't know about the globalist agenda because all they do is watch the mainstream media, which is dumbing them down and misinforming them. And the federal government isn't going to talk about it. Of course not. So they don't know about it, number one. Some of the ones who are informed are in cognitive dissonance or denial. And we see this a lot on our Facebook and YouTube pages. These are people in complete denial. They can't accept reality. We're putting facts in front of them, but their belief system is not compatible, but they're unwilling to change their belief system. This is called cognitive dissonance. And we're seeing a growing number of Canadians who have that every time we throw the facts out. And then there's others who are on the take, who are benefiting from the globalist establishment, and they don't really care. They're just thinking about themselves. As far as we're concerned, many Canadians are indoctrinated, misinformed, and face constant neuro-linguistic programming, mind control via the federal government, multi-controlled opposition, and mainstream media and educational system. This indoctrination has been going on for decades and decades and decades. And basically what's going on, it's called a quiet dictatorship of multi-controlled opposition. So this is pretty much what's going on. What the NCA does is provide the facts. We believe that by having strong Canadians, self-sufficient Canadians, independent Canadians, we're going to have the strongest country. We don't want to indoctrinate people. We don't want to misinform you. We don't want to deceive you. We want to empower you. We want you as strong as you can be. So that's why we provide the facts to you. And a big thing about National Citizens Alliance, our big agenda, because we believe this globalist agenda is at the pinnacle of what's going on in our country and what is wrong. We have a real need to expose it and thereby liberate the Canadian people and get our country back on track. Because as I said, we're heading every day closer to this UN globalist village, and I'll tell you, it's not going to be a fun place. We're going to be divided. There's going to be no distinct identity, heritage, values. Everyone's going to be, there's going to be all these enclaves, immigrant ghettos. It's just going to be a mess. And then there's going to have these people dictating. So we don't want that. And traditional Canadians will be replaced. The people who created, founded, pioneered, settled this country. And that's wrong. And I'm proud to say National Citizens Alliance is the only federal party running in 2019 that will withdraw Canada from the UN Agenda 21 and UN Agenda 2030. There's a lot of Canadians with cognitive dissonance about those agendas and the fact that the globalist conservatives signed Canada onto them. So do your own research, go into your search engine and type Agenda 21 PDF. Go look it up. Type into your search engine Agenda 2030 PDF. Go look it up. These are all about global communism, open borders, global citizenry. The National Citizens Alliance is the only party that will implement ideological screening to prevent radicals like Hizb ut-Tahrir from entering Canada. And we have no ill will towards Hizb ut-Tahrir. But we don't think they should be in Canada. They want to implement Sharia in Canada and worldwide. So why are they in Canada? They shouldn't be in Canada. We will not allow them in Canada. And if we're elected to a majority, we will make sure that they're removed from Canada and any other of these radical extremists. National Citizens Alliance is the only federal party in 2019 that will end the sustained mass immigration and thereby prevent the replacement of Canada's traditional population. And we are committed to reducing immigration to 50,000 or less per year. And tonight I presented facts to you. And I looked at the big picture. I hope you get the big picture. And that was the purpose of tonight, to understand the big picture. And we don't want you to blame these groups. You should be blaming ultimately the electorate for keep putting these globalist sellouts into power. And the way you want to do it is try to inform them. Give them the facts. Keep giving them the facts like we're doing. Share our message. We can turn this around. We have a big battle in front of us. The Canadian people have been abused, misused. They've been treated with contempt through all this indoctrination and misinformation. But we stand in full opposition to what's going on. Please join NCA. Go to our website today, National Citizens Alliance, and sign up. Become a member. Run in 2019. Please share a donation so we can advertise the party. Thank you very much.